Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update for the morning of the 4th of February 2023. Let's get straight to it. Goes as ever to the figures released by the Ukrainians for the Russian losses for the day before. Usual caveats, inaccurate propaganda. Russians don't produce the same amount. These are kind of indicative. Anyway, 720 liquidated personnel, so that's fairly high. 3 tanks, 6 APCs, 5 artillery systems, 3 anti-aircraft war systems, 4 UAVs, 13 vehicles and fuel tanks, 1 piece of special equipment. Fairly average across the equipment, apart from anti-aircraft warfare systems. That is interesting. If that was like 3 surface-to-air missile systems, that's significant, and that's good for the Ukrainians. I don't have any details of that. Just to put some meat on the bone, so to speak, for evidencing these sort of claims. Here is video footage of 3 drones out of the 4. I've also seen other footage of a drone being actually shot down. So that's to say that when you see 4 drones, that there is evidence to support that 4 drones have been shot down. So one assumes that these are fairly accurate, right? I guess is what I'm saying. Aircraft, I saw 1 aircraft shot down yesterday that's not on there, but then there was one for yesterday on yesterday's figures, and so I think this is the one for yesterday's figures, a Su-25 in the Bakhmut area. And although we haven't got footage of it actually being shot down, we have got footage of the pilot parachuting down. So it just comes into view in a second. There he is. So that's the parachutist coming down. So that's good that there is some evidence here for these aircraft losses that have been huge for Russia recently, but just not too much evidence to confirm them. Okay, Netanyahu, who's met with Emmanuel Macron, the French leader, has shown a willingness to send military things, so to speak, to Ukraine, according to an official with knowledge of the conversation. That's from the Times of Israel. However, at the same time, he does underscore that he could not go too far without provoking Russia. So there's that delicate balance of trying to give stuff to Ukraine to show support for Ukraine. Ukraine are in the right. However, as I've explained before, Israel are in a quite difficult situation. They've got 15% Russian speakers in Israel. They have this ongoing conflict going on with pretty much everyone around them, and part of that involves trying to hit Iran and using the Syrian airspace, which the Russians control. So if they annoy the Russians too much, then they would be unable to do some of their military activities for their own kind of conflicts that are taking place. So quite a difficult position. It's sort of understandable why Israel have been so lukewarm. Okay, Portugal's PM Antonio Costa has decided to walk back on the decision to transfer 4 Leopard 2A6 tanks to Ukraine, according to newspaper Sol. The majority of Portugal's 37 Leopard tanks aren't operational due to a lack of spare parts. Portugal also doesn't have any ammunition. Possibly this decision, maybe others, the German government is now criticizing several NATO partners because of their withdrawal from the pledge to deliver Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. So now Germany getting frustrated with other countries for their lack of, I don't know, in this case, walking back decisions. Now, I would have thought Rheinmetall company in Germany would be able to sort that out. 4 Leopards. I'm sure there are spare parts hanging around somewhere for 4 Leopards. Otherwise, there's no point having them at all. Just scrap them. So I guess there must be a solution to that somewhere. Anyway, Germany has definitely approved sending 88 Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine. I talked about this yesterday. I think that would be fantastic. Yes, they are older tanks, but if you can update their optics and whatnot, then these will be really useful additions to the Ukrainian infantry. We have France and Italy delivering Mamba medium range ground defense system in the spring to help Ukraine defend itself against attacks by Russian drones, missiles, and aircraft. This is stated in a press release in the Ministry of Armed Forces of France. Really good news. However, before you think the Mamba is some new bit of kit, it is SAMP-T, the Aster 30 Mamba. So this is actually something that had already agreed. People are getting excited about this anyway. It is arguably the best air defense system in the world, some would say. But yeah, it doesn't look like that's something new. This is a very interesting development. So, right, there's been this offer from the manufacturers of the Reapers to sell 2 Reapers for $1 each to Ukraine, and this is from the drone makers themselves. However, Ukraine would have to spend $10 million to get to move them, and then $8 million, I think, per year for sustenance and maintenance. So it's not quite as simple as just $2. However, $2 for the Reapers themselves is a fantastic deal, given those caveats. Uh, So they've offered this to Ukraine. Now, as Tim White says here, remember the offer to sell Reaper drones? I didn't report that to you because I wasn't sure whether it was going to be picked up on. Well, one of Ukraine's giant Antonov cargo planes landed at the Creech Air Force Base today, just saying that the Reapers are based at Creech. You can read more about them here. So, about what they do. Reapers are pretty, well, they're very good drones, large drones that have had quite a track record in armed conflict for the United States over recent years. A new batch of BMP-3 IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles. These are, BMP is the Russian for IFV, basically. IFV-3 IFVs were spotted in Russia, recently delivered by Rostec, sent Javelin, sent her regards up front. Now, why this is interesting is this looks like an indication that Rostec, that the Russians are still able to manufacture to some degree. I don't know whether these have just been built, whether they're in storage, but then you'd wonder why it's taken them, if they're just in storage, why it's taken them so long to get them to the front line. But my guess is that they are still manufacturing these. As this person said, this should be taken more seriously. They still have the capacity to produce military material, while we have to wait months for a few armored vehicles. That equation works in their favor. I think that's true. Although how many is this? So this person says that view is about 10 vehicles, or approximately 1 day's losses, plus or minus, at current non-offensive rates. In an offensive, they could all be gone in one skirmish. I understand there are likely more, but unless in multiple hundreds a week, week after week, it's not going to move the needle. So 2 points to make there is: one, take this seriously. These are new vehicles. The other point is, is this enough? Like, is this significant? Is this the first batch of new ones since the war's begun? In that case, this is effectively insignificant. So, how do you interpret that? I don't know. Leave it up to you guys. But it is certainly an interesting development. There's been a huge blaze in Belgorod. An oil depot was on fire after shelling. The plant there is known to have produced also metal parts for the Kerch Bridge, the Crimean Bridge. So a double whammy of utility for taking that out. There's some quite incredible footage of this going up in flames from various angles and various people. That's a big old fire going on there, and yeah, that is going to cause them quite some headaches, I think, going forward. Russia is sending troops to Mariupol and the surrounding area. Currently, their number has exceeded 30,000, which may mean preparations for an offensive. This was reported by Petro Andrushchenko, advisor to the mayor of Mariupol. According to him, over the past week, the Russian military corps in the region has increased by 10 to 15,000. They are mostly housed in villages near Mariupol. At the same time, a unit at Kadyravotsky, numbering 2,000 to 3,000 soldiers, entered one of the seaside villages. So that's interesting. Now, Mariupol, let's go and have a look at my map for getting some range here. As you can see here, Mariupol is within HIMARS range. This is, 84 kilometers is the HIMARS range. Now, you wouldn't want to have HIMARS right behind Vuhledar, so that you might have to push it to, we've heard that they can be fired above 84, but the accuracy might go down a little bit. Or I guess, if you were to move that to there, that's still 84. Depends whether it's Mariupol exactly, or whether it's down here, sort of 93, 99, or whatever. But this is certainly within HIMARS range to some degree. So yeah, uh, that's good that that information is out there in the information space. Will we see a few explosions in Mariupol? Is the first reaction. The second reaction is, okay, so what does this signify? Are these defensive? Are they being brought to there to be spread around here just in case they are thinking that Ukraine is going to do their counteroffensive in the Zaporizhia area or down to Mariupol? So one of the theories is that the Ukrainians are going to hit down here. Let's get the right color first, because that's important. So if they hit down here, they could then cut off Mariupol, and it takes out all of this sort of southern region from as far as being able to be delivered logistics from the east. So they're the railway lines, roads, so on and so forth. Or they could hit down by Melitopol, or they could do both. Both of these options are open, have been touted at the moment. These troops could be piled into Mariupol for an eventual defense, or the other option is that they are being placed there for preparation for an offensive maneuver that the Russians could be doing in the area as well. So we shall see. Turkish companies export to the Russian Federation goods that it uses for military purposes. This is completely unsurprising. The Wall Street Journal has reported this. Companies from Turkey, Kazakhstan, and Armenia resell goods to Russia that Russia cannot purchase due to sanctions. This was stated by the Prime Minister of Latvia, Kristanis Karinč. That's from Reuters. You've got two things. First of all, Turkey is exporting their own kind of goods that Russia can use, and then they are re-exporting goods that are sanctioned that are coming from elsewhere. And not only them, but Kazakhstan and Armenia as well. We know that Russia is able to get their hands on loads of stuff. We've seen drones or things shot down that have components from 30 other like Western nations and things like that. And same with the Iranian pieces of equipment. And it's not necessarily the manufacturers of these pieces that are doing wrong. It's the fact that they can be sold on legitimately, and then legitimately, and then someone along that chain then goes, we're going to sell these to Russia, we're going to sell these to Iran, and that's where it all goes wrong. And it's quite difficult to regulate that or enforce those sanctions. As you can see by the fact that they are still making these things. And finally, 116 Ukrainian servicemen have returned from captivity, among them fighters from Mariupol defending Azovstal. Whether they are Azov Regiment, I don't know. It's interesting. So there's a lot of kickback when you see these prisoner swaps with Russians who say, hang on, one of the promises, one of the objectives for this whole special military operation was the denazification of Ukraine, and yet we keep sending back these supposed Nazi fighters from the Azov Regiment. I mean, that's entirely controversial in itself as a statement. But the point of me saying this is that there is kickback quite often in these prisoner swaps that it's Russia going against its word and its objective in what they're trying to do. But anyway, there's really good news that these people have been exchanged. These exchanges do take place fairly consistently. Both sides will have quite a large number, varying figures of how many POWs each side has. But we still see, just the other day, there are another 10 captured in Vuhledar, so 10 Russians. But yeah, so it's good that these lines of communication are open and these things can take place. Anyway, there you go. That's the news for today. Please check out my frontline update that's going to follow this, hopefully at some point. It's quite a busy day today. So hopefully get that out soonish. But in the meantime, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Please like, subscribe and share. Toodle pips. Speak to you later.